Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Dean Hullings, the Global Defense Solutions Strategist for Forescout Technologies. Now, Dean, before break, we were talking a little bit about Comply to Connect and why the time is right, and we talked a little bit about the IoT devices. Let's delve into that just a little bit more. We know cybersecurity around traditional desktops, servers, laptops, that seems to be something that agencies can start to get their arms around a little bit. But now with this emergence and really increase of use of non-traditional devices, IoT devices, sensors, cameras, and the like that are being connected to the defense network, that makes things even more difficult and gives us another reason why something like Comply to Connect is so important. Give us some of those examples and some of those reasons why we need Comply to Connect as the increase of IoT devices.
Sure, thank you for that. And right before the break, we were talking a little bit about security cameras, and that's just one example of things that are used in the Department of Defense every day for the sustainment of the mission, right? So there's other non-traditional devices. You look at industrial control systems in our buildings that monitor water flow, that adjust the lighting, that talk to the HVAC systems or the air conditioning and heating systems, the air quality. All of these devices, all of these different systems have sensors and are more and more becoming connected through the IP networks that we're talking about securing. And so the traditional endpoint or the desktop, the laptop type security systems, most of them are based on what's called an agent. It's just a small piece of software that is loaded onto the endpoint, is loaded onto the desktop, that then reports the status, the cybersecurity hygiene level of that device back to a server or some kind of host system. And when you're talking about these non-traditional devices, they can't take those kinds of endpoint security agents and therefore are ineffective in securing those non-traditional devices. Similarly, we talked earlier about the ACAS system, the vulnerability scanning system. And a lot of these non-traditional devices have such slimmed down operating systems. The software that makes them work, that's embedded in these devices, is very stripped down just to get their job done. And so if a scanner, like a vulnerability assessment scanner, like is in the ACAS program, if that were to interrogate one of these endpoints, you'd overload that operating system and you'd actually crash the device. So you're trying to apply security so the endpoint continues to work, but in doing so, you're actually making the endpoint stop working. So you're defeating your own purposes though. So you have to have more newer, modernized ways of looking at the solution that is provided to secure these devices, yet not impact how they're operating. And that's what Comply to Connect is delivering, agent-less solutions that can use other methodologies of understanding what that device is, and then use policy-based security to wrap a barrier around that device that's different than wrapping the same kind of level of security around a desktop or one of these other traditional endpoints that we've talked about as well. So that's really the biggest reason that Comply to Connect was delivered, to fill those gaps.
Because I know DoD has been working on ACAS and host-based security system for quite a while, and to some extent, but what Comply to Connect will do is bring those data from those two systems or those two tools with other tools, and then gives you and I'll use it, and if you'll forgive me, Dean, the single pane of glass, right? Mm-hmm. The dashboard, whatever we're calling it these days. So a systems administrator, a cybersecurity professional within DoD can then see, okay, this IoT device is giving me trouble, or potentially is a threat or vulnerability, so I need to either turn it off or fix it somehow, while this desktop is also potentially a vulnerability. I'm getting the full picture through this Comply to Connect effort.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Jason. And so on your desktops, where you can put that agent on there, what Comply to Connect is going to do is interrogate that box and make sure that all of those tools that you want working are working properly. Are they loaded? Are they running? Are they configured properly? Do they have the latest updates? At the same time, it's looking at the ACAS has that vulnerability scanner, which is traditionally a time-based thing. It happens every 7 days or 3 days or 2 weeks, whatever the administrators have set up. Has that happened, and was this device interrogated? Well, you mentioned laptops before. If somebody had taken their laptop home with them over a long weekend and that scan takes place on Sunday evenings, well, that laptop doesn't reach or doesn't get the scan that it needs to ensure that it hasn't been compromised in some way. So Comply to Connect, before that device now connects to the network, it checks and makes sure that that vulnerability scan meets the compliance. So that's how the Comply to Connect platform is some ways that it's going to be providing value to traditional IT devices. But then on the non-traditional devices, as we've talked about before, you have to use different methodologies. You have to watch the traffic. Is a device making calls out to the internet when it's not supposed to? Is it reaching across your network into unknown areas of your network, like financial databases or personnel databases, as compared to just talking to the server that it's supposed to talk to and using the protocols that it's supposed to use to get its individual mission accomplished. And if it's not, you have a problem. And so you can either isolate that device or potentially just alert a security specialist or the network specialist so that they can go out and look at that device and find out what's really causing that problem. Often it can be just a misconfiguration or something small, one of those mistakes or a problem that got overlooked, like we talked about earlier, that just needs a simple correction. But certainly you don't want to leave it to chance. You want to understand it. You want to see it when it's happening. And then you want to make it in every way possible an automated action to get it remediated so it doesn't cause additional problems on your network.
Sounds like this type of program is something that is more than just a directive. It's really something that all the services are seem to be getting behind. Is there funding already? Is this something they got to figure out funding for? What are you seeing from defense agencies, the military services about how to pay for something like Comply to Connect?
Yeah, that's the big change in this past fiscal year that of course just ended last week or earlier this week. In fiscal year 2020, Congress actually appropriated funds so that an enterprise-wide Comply to Connect program could move forward. So the Defense Information Agency created a program management office so they could manage that enterprise delivery. So now they've purchased the licenses, the software that's behind the foundational capability, so they can now make it available to the other users, as we mentioned before, Air Force users, Army users, and quite frankly, some areas of the Navy and the Marine Corps as well, and all of those fourth estate organizations that have not yet come on board with Comply to Connect. They've made these licenses available to them. So I don't want to say it's free, right? Because nothing's free, but it's not something that's going to come out of the services pockets for the licenses to make it move forward. So that's what changed in 2020 to make it an enterprise approach beyond just the Pathfinder approaches that were coming out of individual organizations' pockets.
Is Comply to Connect as simple as taking the software licenses and installing them and going, or is there there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, there certainly is. I wish there was a magic button where you could just, install some software and hit return and everything would be perfect. But certainly there's not, and that's part of what the program office is going to be doing is developing those enterprise-wide policies, testing them, making sure that they don't impact other organizations, other networks, other sub-networks, and then working with the Defense Department services agencies to ensure that their rollout is seamless. So that program office is going to have multiple layers of expertise to help them through that, whether it's architecture discussions or policy employment discussions. But what they're also doing is they're providing the training for the administrators out in the field. So, I mean, I was a squadron commander, and the last thing I wanted to hear was a mandate to install and implement something new and then put it on my back to go figure out how to get my people trained, because obviously all commanders depend on their people. And if their people aren't trained, they can't deliver the mission that is necessary. So the program office is taking that into account, and they're actually fielding hundreds of classes to train thousands of administrators within the first year, so that this mandate that comes out under the memo and the licenses that are being provided free of charge to the organizations from DISA can come together with people that are trained on how to operate the capability once it's delivered into their environments.
You cannot underestimate the importance of training. I don't know how many vendors I talk to that, put in a piece of software and the agency doesn't either pay for training, or they don't ask for training, or they never get enough training, or never keeps up with the training. And then they realize that the tool is only 10% usage or 20% usage. I'm sure you guys hear about that too a lot.
Yeah, we absolutely do. In fact, that's one of the challenges that really make the DoD's environment complex is often they've purchased equipment or systems or software that, as you say, only gets 10%, 15% utilized, and there's so much more that it can offer. So the DISA folks that have put together the program office really wanted to take that into account and make sure that that's not a capability left on the table, if you will, which of course in today's environment with COVID-19 and travel restrictions and all those different effects of the problems we have today with that disease have really restricted things, and that's why the training for now, at least, that is being offered is going to be virtual training, still instructor-led, classroom-based, but is going to be given in a virtual environment so that they get all of the benefits of the Comply to Connect capabilities that are going to be delivered in the training thereof.
All right, very good. Dean, unfortunately, we're out of time. This has been a great conversation. So let me thank my guest, Dean Hullings, the Global Defense Solutions Strategist for Forescout Technologies. Dean, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Jason, thanks for having me here.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carahsoft on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search innovation.